Okay, in this unit we'll be talking about graphics. So in this first video we'll look at what graphics are and how you point to them, how you refer to them in the text. Then we'll look in the second video about captions, how you label them. And then in the last two we'll look at improving tables, and in the final one, improving figures. First of all, it's important to realize that the word graph and graphics sound the same, but they're very different. Graphs are either line graphs, bar graphs, different types of charts that show usually the relationship between two variables. Then you also have various other types of illustrations, such as photographs or many different kinds of illustrations. We'll mention a few later. All of these together are figures. And then you also have tables. Tables are a separate category. Everything is listed in a journal article, in most cases, as either a table or a figure. But all of those together are called graphics. Unfortunately, there's no better name, so you just have to learn to distinguish the two. Now, again, sometimes you have more than one kind of graphic, more than one kind of figure within a single figure. So sometimes you have a situation like this where you have a graph and a photograph. Sometimes in science and engineering, I've even seen cases where you have a table and a graph and a figure, all in one overall figure. And if so, these are labeled independently, in this case A, B, C, and D. And each one has a separate description. Now there are various numbering systems that are used. The most common is simply figure 1, 2, 3, 4, table 1, 2, 3, 4. But as I showed you just now, there are some cases where one figure will have several smaller figures within that. And in those cases, those are labeled 1, A, B, C, and D. Sometimes, if those are very large, for instance, if it's a table that goes on multiple pages, but also has subparts, you may have table 1A, table 1B, because, to show that they're related. But a lot of journals, if they are shown as a separate caption, they prefer table 1, table 2, even if they are related. Books, you have a different format because you often indicate the chapter as well as the number within the chapter. So you have 1.1, 1.2 in chapter 1, 2.1, 2.2 in chapter 2, etc.
This only applies to thesis writing. In thesis, you also have figures and tables in each chapter. So you have to list them. Chapter 1, 1.1, table 1.1, 1.2, and so on.
Right, because that's essentially a book format rather than a journal format. Anytime you have separate chapters, you'll have that sort of situation. So it's important to mention every single graphic in the text so that the reader can connect the two. You can mention it more than once, but you must mention each one at least once. Now, in order to do that, then you have to point. You have to refer to that table or figure in the text. And there are, again, two ways to do that. One is just to point to it, saying something like, table 1 shows the results, or the results of the first test are shown in table 1, using the passive. Note that these are in the present tense. You got your data in the past, but it's right there for people to see right now. So you refer to it always in the present tense. In engineering, it's very common to use this simply point to a table. But in most fields, they prefer that you point to it, you locate it, and you also highlight something about it. So you point out that, as we show in table 1, the experimental treatment is better than the standard treatment for all cases except. Okay, so that you point to the reader what they should look at, what they should note in that table or figure. Similarly, you can ask the reader to see. So you can say, as can be seen from table 1. So you're asking them to do the work. So the format that's preferred varies from field to field. Also the verbs. vary from field to field if you choose to use a verb. And there are different ones that are more common for tables and others for figures. Some are common, like show. Table 1 shows, figure 1 shows. But something like illustrate or depict, those are very clearly related to figures, whereas summarize is more often used for a table, summarizing the data. And again, as I said, there are some that are reader agent, where you're asking the reader to see or observe something. And this differs again by each field. You said that in your field, there
Yes.
are other verbs.
In social sciences, we tend to use hedges because we are not 100% sure or certain that is exactly the result. So we tend to say, as shown in table 1, this tends to suggest, or this tends to indicate such and such. We use a lot of hedges, especially the verb we prefer, suggest.
And then websites are sort of a different creature altogether, because usually figures and tables are shown by the page they're on. So you may have several table 1s within the larger website, but each clickable page will list them in order, table 1, table 2. Now, if it's a pop-up, if you click on a link and the table pops up, it may not be numbered because people then would not necessarily be reading them in sequence. So again, that's a slightly different thing than in a full written format. In the next video, we'll be looking at how you caption either a table or a figure, similarities and differences in that.